First look, this next bit of information knowledge, number 12, prohibition of operating multiple drones at the same time, might sound like a little bit like no duh. You know, it's hard enough to fly one drone, let alone operate two of them at the same time. But this actually was something that Amazon pushed very hard for. Amazon has a stated goal. They'd like to do drone delivery of products you order within 30 minutes of you ordering it to your front door. And part of their plan to do that was to actually automate the drone flights so that drone takes off out of the warehouse, and the flight path to the location where the delivery occurs is autonomous. It just flies there. When it reaches the location of the house it's going to deliver the materials to, a drone pilot comes on, takes over controls, and then guides the drone down to the front doorstep to actually deliver the package, avoiding the telephone wires and avoiding the dog and the cat and the mailman and everything else in between. Once the package is delivered, the drone takes off back up to altitude. The pilot basically pushes auto fly, lack of better words. It flies back to the manufacturing facility or the warehouse. And so this pilot, in Amazon's eyes, was going to be flying, say, 10 or 12 drones, but all he's doing is landing at the house where it's being delivered, and once it's up in the air, it's autonomous. FAA said, no. We want one drone, one pilot, because if something goes wrong in midair, that pilot is responsible and has to be able to grab the controls, even from autonomous flights, at any moment in the event that something goes wrong. So, unfortunately, you can't fly more than one drone at a given time. Item number 13, hazardous materials. A small aircraft may not carry hazardous materials. Bottom line, can't do it. If you want the details here, what's hazardous, aerosols, pesticides, ag products, things like aircraft batteries, other than the one that's flying your machine, so you can't fly some double A's across the room to your buddy. That's technically illegal, ironically. And so those are some examples of things like gas, liquefied or dissolved materials under pressure. And so this also means that spraying a pesticide over a cornfield is technically illegal right now. Doesn't mean that it won't be legal in the future, but as of right now, we're not able to use a drone to spray for pesticides. Something that many ag companies would love to get accomplished. Number 14, staying away from other aircraft in the right-of-way rules. Basically, it comes down to this. The drone must yield the right-of-way to all things flying in the air. Period, end of story. Yielding the right-of-way means the drone gives way, and you may not pass over, under, or ahead of that other vehicle that's flying through the air unless you're well clear of it. So I can't buzz in front of the airplane and go, well, I was 5 yards off his wing. I had plenty of space. No. You're responsible for avoiding him. He's not responsible for avoiding you. And really what it comes down to, their definition of avoiding means if it causes them to begin wondering if they should alter their course, you've violated their right-of-way. And they're very strict on this, especially on some of these planes coming in for landing or flying low coming into an airport. They really want to be careful with those because they're on a definitive path, and they don't want to deviate from that because it's going to cause them to miss the runway they're trying to land on. So right-of-ways, you've got to avoid everything else. The one exception might be the birds. But other than that, you've got to avoid all other airborne vehicles that may come across you. Verse 15, not verse, I guess it's knowledge 15, operating over humans. Bottom line, you cannot operate over a human being unless, two items. Number one, they are directly participating in the operation of the drone, or you're flying over top of people who are somehow covered by an overhang. So if you're at a football stadium and there is the retractable roof, and the drone is flying above the retractable roof, it's technically over top of people, but because there is a retractable roof between the drone and the people, it's legal. So technically, like in the Dallas Cowboy football stadium, when they'll retract through slightly, so there's that hole in the middle of the roof, you could fly the drone around the outside of that, zooming down in, and you'd be legal. I don't know that Dallas Cowboys are very happy with you, but you would not be violating this ordinance. Now, question was raised earlier, what is directly participating in the operation? If I'm videotaping a football game, and that player is on the football team flying on the field, is he directly participating because it's part of the videotaping operation? No. Directly participating means they're the pick, they're the observer, or they are the control operator. And so be very careful on that. You're not allowed to fly over top of people. The FAA doesn't say how close you can get to the people. They leave that very much to our discretion in that hazardous flying rule we talked about a little earlier. So if you're a really good pilot, flying within 10 feet of people but not directly over them may be considered okay. For other pilots, 10 feet from somebody might be a little hazardous because their skill level's not quite where it should be. But you can't fly over top of people. No exceptions. NFL would love to get this exemption here. Can you imagine if they could eliminate all those cords for all the cameras and all the wires, and they could just have some drones flying around the stadium? You could get some really cool video of those football games. But as of now, the FAA has said no, you cannot fly over people, no exceptions. Number 16, prior authorization. There are certain places in air where you, as a pilot, are not able to operate a drone unless you get authorization. And we'll talk about these airspace classifications next week. But for now, just realize that Class B, C, and D airspaces are areas you may not fly a drone unless you get prior authorization from air traffic control, the local tower at the local airport. This is not just for commercial flights, this is also for recreational flights. How many people do you think are calling the Sioux City Tower saying, hey, is it okay if I fly? I did it once. The guy that answered the phone said, what are you talking about and why are you talking to me? They now know and understand after I educated them on it. But, 3 spaces, if you're within one of those airspaces, and basically they're around airports, is where that comes down to. Class D is your small airports, like your rural private airports. Class C would be Sioux City Airport. Class B would be your large Chicago's and Detroit's and the real big hub-type airports. And so those are different classifications of airspace around those airports. So just remember, you're not allowed to fly near an airport, and the general rule of thumb is 5 miles, unless you get prior authorization from air traffic control. And we'll talk more about what that means later on. Operating in the vicinity of an airport. Here's later on. No person may operate in the manner that interferes with operations and air traffic patterns at any airport, heliport, or seaplane base. Definition here, 5 miles. 5 miles is considered that magic line of interference. Any closer than that, and you run the risk of your drone either being shot out of the air with a gun. Many airports are buying drone guns, which are, it's literally a radio control signal that it sends to your drone that basically overpowers the signal it has with your handheld control or your control station, and they can force it to land anywhere they want. And it's up to them if they give it back, I guess. Chicago is also working with Eagles. They've got some Eagles that actually take out drones. The Eagles have been trained that basically drones are the enemy, and if you have never done so, go on YouTube and type in Eagle attacking the drone. And you get some pretty interesting videos there of these massive birds that come in and can just, that drone doesn't have a chance. They're really very effective, and they're being used around airports to not only take care of other birds, but take care of the drones. Number 18, operating in prohibited or restricted areas. In addition to the airport, you may not operate a small drone in areas that are restricted unless the person that's in charge of that restricted area has given you permission as appropriate. So there are certain areas that are around military bases. There are certain areas around federal buildings. Like, for example, on the Missouri River over here by Yankton, South Dakota, there is a dam. You're not able to fly that drone within a mile of that dam unless you get permission from the operator of the dam. Now, if I have a field that's a half mile from that dam, every time I want to fly the drone over my field, I technically need to call and get permission. Really what I'm doing is I'm letting them know, hey, this is what I'm using the drone for. Don't shoot me down. Because the concern around that building or the federal buildings is, maybe a terroristic activity or somebody with a bomb or evil intent. And by calling them and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm at, he basically says, hey, that drone that we see over there, yeah, we know about it. And we know what he's doing. He's cool. So Be sure you know where those prohibited and restricted areas are in your locale. If you have not done so already, get Know Before You Fly. That's an app for your smartphone or Android device that's put out by the FAA, and it shows a lot of these restricted areas as they relate to you and I. All right, moving on to part 4. We're buzzing right through this stuff. Number 19, NOTAMs. NOTAMs are really notices for airmen, and they talk about restrictions in certain areas, such as, say, President Trump comes to visit Sioux City. They may put a NOTAM out for a certain area saying, hey, during these times when you normally could fly your drone, we're going to restrict it because we have the president in the area of the location. And so you are required to follow all NOTAMs. The cool thing is if you go to FAA.gov, you can actually sign up for an email that comes out periodically, and it basically tells you where these NOTAMs are being implemented around the nation, what they're for, how long. And so as long as you've signed up for that email, it's pretty simple. I can remember during this last presidential election, every day there's NOTAMs coming out saying, there's going to be a flight restriction at this town, there's going to be a flight restriction over here, and you could, if you really wanted to, you could probably start following where these people are flying to based on the flight restrictions and timings and all that. But you need to follow them because they're very serious on these requirements. NOTAMs basically talk about temporary flight restrictions, and they're designed to protect persons, property. They provide a safe environment for operation of disaster relief. Last summer we had some forest fires out in the California area. There was a NOTAM that was in place for those fires, and I don't know if you remember, there was someone who flew a drone trying to get some really cool photographs and video of the forest fires, and they shut down the water tankers that were flying water onto those fires. Why? Because the drone was flying in a NOTAM area, and they couldn't risk having one of those tankers hit the drone and literally crash. There was a reward that was put out by the insurance companies for this person who flew that drone, and so they got some really cool video and photographs, but unfortunately they can't share them because they'd be getting sued by the insurance company for the houses that burned because those airplanes couldn't drop their water. The NOTAM is issued by the FAA, and so it's important that when it's issued that you follow it. They're issued, there'll be one coming up here. Well, I guess by the time you guys are watching this, the Super Bowl will have already gone past, but there's one that's issued for the Super Bowl every year to prevent us from flying over the Super Bowl. And when they're issued, unless you are directly participating in the activity, the relief effort, you're a law enforcement person, or you've somehow gotten approval from the FAA, you may not fly the drone